Hello, Year 9. I'm here to talk to you about your next assessment task, which is the Animal Farm podcast, which will be due your last Friday or Thursday back, which I think is the 18th of June. The 19th being your last day of term, so you're only back at school for 9 days before you start your holidays. So, the podcast, what is a podcast? A podcast is a special interest broadcast that's recorded. And as I said, it is a special interest. So, it has generally around a theme or a genre. There are, real life true crime podcasts. There are entertainment podcasts, fashion podcasts. There's podcasts on music, there's podcasts on film and TV and celebrity. So there's a whole range of podcasts, and I'd really encourage you to have a listen to a couple just to see how they're presented, because the idea of a podcast is to engage and entertain your audience. You don't want people won't be tuning in if it's boring and dull and monotone. So you want to make it exciting, engaging. People want to listen to your podcast. So what your podcast is going to be about is the book Animal Farm, which we've been studying this term. And basically around either the characters, the themes, or the setting of Animal Farm. And you're going to discuss it in groups of 3 to 4. Whatever your thesis question is that you're going to be examining throughout your podcast. And I'll talk to you a little bit more about that in a moment. So you're going to get into groups of 3 and 4, as I said, to do a 3 to 6 minute podcast. Now, each member of the group must be heard equally, because you're all being assessed as a group. But you all need to be equal in your input, so in your creation of your podcast, so your script that you're going to write, as well as the recording. Now, if you want to just do it on your own, you could, although that'll be a little bit tricky because you need to have the bounce back and forth, the debate and the banter and things like that. That's what podcasts are known for, and that's how they engage their audience. So it needs to be exciting, it needs to be lively, it needs to be robust, so a really good discussion. And the way you do that is to do your research beforehand. So you can use your sticky notes, you can use any of the resources you've been given for Animal Farm to help you construct your script that you will then record for your podcast. So 3 to 6 minutes, groups of 3 to 4. Now, what are you going to be talking about? What's your theme going to be? So as I said before, you need a thesis question or statement that you're going to address throughout your introduction, your body, and your conclusion of your podcast. So if you're talking about the characters, for example, your thesis question might be that Snowball was a better leader than Napoleon. And then in your groups, you're going to discuss that. You might have everyone agree, or you might have half agree, half disagree, but there needs to be some kind of discussion around that. And then you're going to use examples from the text where, Snowball said this or did that or this happened that showed that Snowball was a better leader. That's just one example. If you're going to use themes, you might look at the theme of corruption and how power corrupts. So people in power tend to be corrupt because they misuse their power. So your thesis statement or question might be absolute power corrupts absolutely, which is an actual famous saying. So anyone who holds, the monopoly of power can be open to corruption. And if that was your thesis question or statement, you would discuss that. You would use examples from the text where whoever was in power, Mr. Jones or Napoleon, used their power poorly, and in fact were corrupted. And to be corrupted means to sort of get payoffs for your power, for things to go their way, etc. If you're going to, so that's around a theme, but you can look at any of the themes in the text and discuss that. It could be, I'll leave that up to you. I'm not going to give you all the answers. And the last one, setting. So you could look at the setting of Animal Farm. Could it have been set anywhere else? Could it have been set anywhere in the world? Could it have been set in a factory, for example? And so again, you would use examples from the text where it could be transposed to a factory, or could have been transposed to, somewhere in the Caribbean that has, any of those countries that have a totalitarian leadership. When Saddam Hussein was running Iraq, places like that. So you could look at countries that have that sort of dictatorship, and you could transpose the events of Animal Farm to that. As you know, Animal Farm was set based on an allegory of the Russian Revolution. That's how George Orwell compared his. So think about characters you might like to examine, the themes you might like to examine, or the setting. You don't have to do all three, you just pick one, because again, it only goes for 3 to 6 minutes. If you've got a group of 4, it must go for 4 to 6. So at least allow everyone at least a minute to talk. So that's that aspect of it: characters, themes, setting. You might want to discuss events in Animal Farm that run parallel to events that are happening in the world just recently or even now. Is there any elements of Animal Farm that could be transposed to what's going on with the COVID crisis? So you could think about that, some sort of higher level, higher order thinking, we call that. Now, you must have an introduction. You can't just press record and then into it. You must have your introduction, so contention, background. Why are we talking about this? What are you going to be talking about throughout the podcast? Then you're going to have, say, maybe 3 examples that you're going to address. So if you're picking characters, state what characters you're talking about, what your thesis statement is or question. And we'll go back to the Snowball example. Snowball was a better leader than Napoleon. And then you're going to have 3 examples where that's shown, and that's going to be the body of your discussion. And then, of course, you do your conclusion. You round it up, you show, you restate what you've talked about. If it was it could be persuasive or it could be informative. Either way, you're restating what you've talked about and that you've sort of proven what you've spoken about. And then you would do what's known in the biz as an outro. So it could be music, it could be, you might have a catchphrase, tune in to Literary Life next week or whatever, that you round off nice and succinctly your podcast. You're not to just go, 6 minutes, stop. You need to have a conclusion / outro. Okay, so I just want to check the actual assessment task that we've got. I've talked about everything I need to. Yes. So how in depth your discussion is and how robust your discussion is will be based on how well you know the text. So make sure in your scripting process you are having your examples and then your evidence to back it up, so your quotes and stuff. Now, you're kind of used to that from the essay, the persuasive essay, that you've had, your persuasive technique, then you've had an example, and then you've had your reasons why it's effective. In this case, in case of the podcast, you don't have to use persuasive techniques, but you do have to have evidence and examples from the text to back up what your 3 reasons are. So again, to use the Snowball example, if you're talking about Snowball being a better leader, you are finding 3 examples from the text where that occurred, and then whether that's a quote, whether that's an event, or whether that's something that happened, you're going to use that. Now, the people in your group can agree or disagree and say, no, I disagree with that. I think Napoleon was a better leader. So that makes the interest and the banter of the podcast. So the first thing you need to do is get your groups of 3 to 4. Then you're going to decide what you're going to be discussing, theme, character, or setting. Then you're going to sit down as your group. Now, for the first week, you'll be obviously at home, but in your groups, you can team chat and start fleshing out your script. And then you can think about, because you'll have 2 weeks back at school to rehearse it, refine it, and then record it to make sure you've got a quality product to submit on June the 18th. So any questions, shoot me a message in the chat, but this was served as an intro. I've got like 100 million tradesmen here this week because of my flooding situation, so I thought I'd do a quick intro like this, and some of you have also finished most of you finished the essay as well that was due last week, but if anyone who was still working on that other people could go ahead and watch this. So I'll see you in real life in 8 more sleeps or a week now. Otherwise, off to work on your podcast assessment. Remember, your group, your choice of subject matter, your research, script, and then once you've practiced it, once you've timed it, once you're satisfied it'll go for 4 to 6 minutes, and that it's lighthearted and fun, and there's a bit of back and forth and banter, and everyone has an equal amount of time speaking, then you can record it and then listen back, edit, and then submit. So that's Miss V out from her lounge room for another 8 days, and I will see you very, very soon in real life, IRL, as we say in the trade. Mwah! Bye.